Welcome to Paranormal M. It feels amazing to be here doing what I love. How's your day going? Drop a comment and let me know. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting the channel. It really means a lot. I'm even happier knowing these paranormal stories help you unwind. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Now, grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. And hey, don't forget to send in your own paranormal experiences too. So, picture this with me for a second. It's a rainy Thursday night, about 5 years ago. I'd canceled plans, decided I was done with people for the day, and I was just going to stay in, curl up in bed, and watch some show on my phone. You know those nights where the bed is the whole world? That was the mood. Now, normally when I'm alone, I don't really cook for myself. I'm a decent cook, but if it's just me, I'm usually a grab some crackers and cheese and call it dinner kind of person. But for whatever reason that night, I got this little burst of motivation, like, no, we're doing this properly. My roommate at the time, his name was Leo, was home too. He was this super intense, slightly weird musician/graphic artist type. He basically lived in his room, or in the little studio attached to it. Door always closed, headphones always on. We were friendly, but he was very much a do not disturb kind of guy, so as far as I knew, he was locked away and busy. Anyway, I decide to cook myself something nice. I make this whole elaborate pasta situation. I'm talking water boiling, garlicky olive oil, veggies sizzling in the pan, zucchini, bell peppers, mushrooms, the works. I simmer a tomato sauce with herbs, add a little cream to make it silky, toss in the pasta, and plate it all up on this plain white dinner plate we had. Normal plate, normal rim, nothing fancy. It took me maybe 40 minutes, and I was weirdly proud of it. Like, look at you, cooking a real meal for yourself. I don't bother with the dishes. I just grab the plate with one hand, a fork and a folded paper towel with the other, and head to my room. I nudge my bedroom door closed with my foot, climb onto my full-sized bed. Yeah, not even a queen, just a full. And set the plate down almost in the middle of the bed, next to my phone that's propped up against a pillow. Now, my room has 2 doors. One door goes out to the kitchen and living room. The other door, on the opposite wall, opens to this short hallway that leads to the bathroom, and then out to a little back patio and garden area. That bathroom is literally like 3 steps from my door. I set my plate down, make sure my show is queued up, and then I realize I have to pee. Of course. So I slip out, leave both my bedroom doors open. Totally normal for me because, again, Leo rarely wandered into that side of the house, and I go to the bathroom. I don't even fully close the bathroom door. I'm gone for maybe, 10 seconds? 15 max. Just a quick pee, wash my hands, and I'm heading right back. I walk the few steps back into my room, already excited to dig into this pasta I lovingly crafted. And I stop. Because the bed is there, the phone is there, the fork is there, the folded paper towel is there. But the plate of food? Completely gone. Not just shifted or a little off to the side. Gone. Like it never existed. No crumbs, no sauce drips, nothing. I just stand there for a second, trying to make my brain catch up. My first thought is honestly that I'm being dramatic and forgetful. I'm like, okay, Mia, because that's my name, by the way. Maybe you only plan to bring the food in here, and you imagine the part where you actually did it. So I stand there, sniff the air, and I can still smell the pasta. The garlicky tomato smell is strong. It smells like it's right there. I'm doubting myself now. I go back to the kitchen to see if maybe I left the plate on the counter or the stove or something. Nothing. The pots and pans are there. The little splatters of sauce on the stove are there, but no plate. At this point, I start to feel that little prickle of unease. Not full-on fear, more like, okay, universe, what are we doing? The next thought I have is Leo messing with me? Which would be super out of character for him, but my brain is grasping for something normal. So I walk over to his side of the house and knock on his door. He opens it and he already looks annoyed, like he was deep in some project. He kind of squints at me and goes, "What's up, Mia? I'm working." I'm like, please don't think I'm crazy, but are you messing with me? Because something really bizarre just happened in my room. His expression shifts immediately from irritated to curious. His whole energy changes. What do you mean? What happened? So I explain. I made dinner, I set it on the bed, I went to pee, came back, plate gone, fork and napkin still there. He frowns and goes, "That's weird. Okay, let's go look." So he follows me to the kitchen where I show him the evidence of my cooking. Dirty pans, sauce still warm on the stove. And then we walk into my room, and I point at the spot on the bed where I swear the plate was. He goes, "Yeah, that's strange," and then starts helping me look around the room. We do a full sweep. Check under the bed, under the covers, behind the pillows, behind my nightstand. I even pull my blanket completely off the bed like maybe somehow it flipped the plate or something. Nothing. Then I look across the room, like 9 or 10 feet away, behind my laundry basket in the corner, and there it is. The plate. Sitting upright on the floor behind the basket. I walk over and pick it up, and my stomach drops a little. All the food is gone. No pasta, no veggies, just a smear of red sauce on the plate. And the way the sauce looks, it's not like it's smeared by gravity or something falling. It looks like someone dragged their fingers across the plate, leaving streaks. Like when you wipe the last bit of frosting with your fingertips. Leo sees it and goes, "Okay, that's actually creepy." Now we're really confused, because if the food slid off the plate somehow, it would be on the floor. But there's nothing on the floor. No splatters, no spills, nothing. I'm starting to feel a little unsettled and honestly, a little violated. Like, I put time and care into that meal, you know? We start searching for the food, because logically it has to be somewhere. Next to my bed, I have this small wicker wastebasket that I use only for paper. Sketches, notes, crumpled up doodles. I never put any actual trash in it, and I don't line it with a bag. It's just a bin full of paper balls and scraps. I look over at it, and for some reason my brain goes, "Check there." So I walk over, start gently lifting out the paper. On top, it's all the same stuff I tossed the night before. Crumpled white paper, colored scraps, a couple of sticky notes. And then, under that top layer of paper, there's my dinner, my pasta, my veggies, all of it, sitting in the bottom of the wastebasket. No sauce on the inside walls of the basket, none on the paper I pulled off the top. It looks like someone neatly took the paper out, placed the food in the bin, and then carefully put the paper back on top, without getting anything dirty. At that point, my brain just kind of glitches. Leo thinks I'm pranking him now. He looks at me and goes, "Okay, if this is a joke, it's not funny. Did you seriously do all this just to mess with me?" And I just break. I start crying. I don't cry a lot, but between the confusion and feeling like I wasn't being believed, and the fact that my nice little solo dinner got basically thrown away by some unseen force, it hit me hard. I'm like, why would I ruin my own dinner for a joke? I'd worked so hard on it. It felt mean, even if I couldn't see who did it. And he starts walking back to his room. I'm wiping my eyes, still standing by the wastebasket, when I hear his footsteps suddenly stop. Then immediately, I'm talking maybe 3 or 4 seconds later, he's back in my doorway, and his face is white. "Mia," he says, and his voice is tight. "Are you seriously messing with me? Because if you are, it's really not funny." I'm like, "Leo, I swear I'm not. What now?" He just says, "Come here," and motions for me to follow him. We walk back to his room, and his entire computer setup is gone. This man loves his computer. It's his lifeline. Music, art, games, everything. A little laptop, 2 speakers, a MIDI keyboard. It was all set up on this crate next to his mattress. Now, there's just the crate. No laptop, no speakers, no keyboard. It looks like someone carefully plucked the whole setup away. He starts panicking. No, 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 no. He's checking under the blanket, behind the mattress, under the bed, nothing. We check the little connecting studio room, nothing. Then we move through to the laundry room in the back of the house. And there it is. His laptop is lying on its backside, screen closed and facing down on the floor. His speakers are on either side of it, also upside down. Everything is arranged almost neatly, like someone gently placed them there. This is 2 rooms away from his bed, maybe 25 or 30 feet, through at least one doorway and a narrow little hallway. There is absolutely no way he could have sprinted out of my room, unplugged and moved all that, arranged it like that, and made it back to my doorway in the handful of seconds it took him to reappear. We just stand there together, staring at his stuff on the laundry room floor in this weird formation. No sound, no footsteps, no doors creaking. Nothing got knocked over on the way. It's like it teleported there. At this point, the vibe has shifted from, "We're confused," to, "Okay, something in this house is doing its own thing, and we are not in control." Leo is shaken. I'm shaken. There's nothing to really do about it, though. It's not like you can ground a ghost or put the house in timeout. Eventually, we just kind of give up on understanding it. He gathers his stuff and takes it back to his room, checking each piece like it might bite. I go back to mine and end up eating some sad little leftover snacks instead of my beautiful pasta. And as I'm sitting there, it hits me. Maybe whatever did that was actually trying to help me. Maybe there was something off in the food, bad veggies, something spoiled I didn't notice. Maybe, in some super weird way, something was like, "Nope, you're not eating that tonight." Is that true? I have no idea. But honestly, it felt a lot better to imagine some unseen roommate trying to save my life than to think something out there just decided to throw away my solo, hard-earned comfort dinner for fun. So yeah, that's the night my dinner vanished. My roommate's computer teleported, and both of us had to just quietly coexist with the fact that our house apparently had opinions. Make of it what you will. So, I want to tell you about something that happened to me last night, or actually, very early this morning, around midnight. I was in my living room, lights mostly off, just scrolling on my phone, when my friend Marco texted me. He was walking his dog past my place and wrote, "Hey, are you awake? There's someone sitting on your front steps, and your gate is wide open." That immediately felt wrong, because I always close that gate. It's almost a little ritual at this point. From inside the house, I couldn't see clearly. Everything outside was just shapes and shadows. So I got up, turned on the porch light, and opened the front door. By the time I did, whoever had been sitting on the steps wasn't there anymore. I could just make out a figure standing just beyond the gate, closer to the sidewalk. I stepped out onto the path, keeping the door half open behind me, phone pressed to my ear with Marco still on the line. As my eyes adjusted, I saw her, a woman standing a little down the street. I stayed there, on the porch, talking quietly into the phone while she walked slowly up and down the road. Her heels made this distinct, hollow sound against the asphalt. Clack, 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 echoing in the quiet. Every so often she'd stop and look at the houses further up, like she was searching for something, or someone. The way she moved was calm, almost casual, but there was something in the air that just felt off. After a few minutes, she started to drift closer. I tried to lower my voice, but it was obvious I was talking about her. You know when you're pretending you're not, but it's so clear you are? It was like that. She glanced at me, really noticing me for the first time, and then, in this calm but incredibly unsettling tone, she said, "Don't be afraid of me. I'm just sad. I'm waiting for someone." Her voice shook as she spoke, like she was trying very hard not to cry. It wasn't aggressive at all, but it wasn't comforting either. It felt like standing next to a live wire, quiet but buzzing. I kept a bit of distance and told her, as gently as I could, "You can't come inside my house." She gave this small, tired smile and said, "But the gate was open," and took a couple more steps closer, as if that explained everything. That's the part that really got under my skin. The way she said it, like an open gate was an invitation, like the house itself had called her in. I felt this very clear instinct kick in, and I said more firmly, "No, the gate wasn't open. Please stay back." She stared at me for a second, her expression strange, hurt maybe, or annoyed, I couldn't tell. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "Don't stare at me." And that was it. She turned around and walked away, the same slow, steady pace, heels tapping against the road, her whole presence oddly calm but somehow heavy at the same time. I remember exactly what she looked like. She had shoulder-length dark brown hair, a pale blue dress that fell just below her knees, and a light jacket over it, even though the night was warm. She carried a medium-sized handbag tucked close to her side, and those heels. They didn't look particularly fancy, just plain, but that sound they made is stuck in my head. Now, about the gate. I know I shut it. I'm almost obsessive about it. And it's not the kind of gate that just swings open if the wind feels dramatic. One side is fixed into the ground with a heavy metal pin, and you really have to pull and shove to move it. It usually scrapes a bit when you do. After she walked away from me, I went back inside, locked the door, and looked out through the window. Marco stayed on the phone, giving me a kind of running commentary from his place further down the street. He told me she kept pacing up and down the road for another 15-20 minutes. Same slow walk, same path. Sometimes she'd stop under a streetlight. Sometimes she'd stare at a house. And then, at some point, she just wasn't there anymore. He looked away briefly, and when he checked again, she was gone. I know this could have been just a distressed person, maybe going through something difficult. And part of me honestly feels sad for her. The way she said she was waiting for someone sounded so desperate and lonely. But at the same time, there was this energy around her that didn't feel normal. It's hard to explain. It wasn't just the situation. It was the way the air felt, the strange mix of calm and unease. The open gate that shouldn't have been open. The way she spoke, like she was half in this moment and half somewhere else entirely. I'm sharing this with you because I can't quite shake it off. I keep replaying it in my mind, wondering if anyone else has met someone like that. A stranger who appears where they shouldn't be, right at the boundary between your home and the outside world, carrying a presence that feels different. I don't know what that was. Maybe it was just a sad woman on a strange night. Maybe it was something more. All I know is that the way she looked at me and the way that gate stood open will stay with me for a long time. I don't usually talk about this stuff, but since we're already on the topic of creepy retail stories, let me share two that really stuck with me. Both came from friends of mine who used to work in different stores. So first, there's my friend Marco. He used to work the late shift at this 24-hour mini-mart on the corner of a really busy intersection. From the outside, it looked totally normal. Bright lights, loud traffic, people stumbling in for snacks at 2 a.m. But the staff all knew. The stockroom and the tiny break room at the back were not normal. Years before Marco got hired, there'd been an older employee. Everyone just called him Tito Ben. He did double shifts all the time. One night, he lay down on the old couch in the break room to rest, and just never woke up. After that, people said he never really left. Marco told me that on quiet nights, when he'd go to the back alone to get more stock, he'd sometimes see a man sitting on that same couch, in the store uniform, head slightly bowed like he was trying to nap. At first, Marco thought it was one of the senior staff resting, so he'd say, "Kuya, sorry, I need to get past." But the guy would never answer. And then, when Marco looked a second time, the man's face would be wrong. Not bloody or anything dramatic, just blurred out, like someone smudged his whole face with a thumb. The uniform logo was clear, the name patch was clear, but the features were missing. The manager even set up a small altar near the stockroom door. A framed photo of a saint, some candles, a dish with rock salt, and fresh flowers every Monday. They'd light a candle at the start of the night shift and quietly say, "Please let us work in peace. Please rest." And still, weird things kept happening. Sometimes cartons would already be stacked when nobody remembered doing it. Sometimes the roll-up metal door at the back would rattle like someone was trying to come in, even though it was locked and chained. And at least twice, Marco said he felt someone brush past him in the narrow hallway, like a person squeezing through. But when he turned, he was alone. The last straw for him was one night around 3 a.m. He went to the break room to grab his tumbler, and through the little glass panel in the door, he saw a man standing inside, facing the wall. Store uniform. Same build as the old photos of Tito Ben. Marco thought it was just one of his coworkers. He pushed the door open, saying, "Bro, you okay?" The lights flicked off for half a second. Just a blink. When they flicked back on, the room was empty. No footsteps, no sound of the door closing. Nothing. Marco checked the CCTV later with the supervisor, and on the footage, you could see Marco talking into an empty room. He quit 2 weeks after that. He told me, "Look, I can handle rude customers and graveyard shifts, but not someone who died on the couch I'm supposed to nap on." Now, the second story is from my friend Leila. She used to work at this big, fancy bookstore in the city. 6 floors if you count the basement. You know the type. Quiet music, perfect lighting, cafe on one level, and every shelf so neatly arranged it almost feels like a library. But according to the staff, that place was one giant haunted house with air conditioning. The security guards were the first ones to complain. Down by the service entrance on the first floor, near where deliveries came in, they'd sometimes see what they called a replay. Years ago, there'd been a fight between 2 warehouse guys. No one talked about the details, but everyone knew it ended with one of them getting stabbed. There was no sound, no blood, just this silent, flickering scene that played out for a few seconds and then vanished. The CCTV never caught it clearly, just weird distortions or flashes of static. Then there was the second floor, the kids and teens section. You'd think that would be the friendliest area, right? Bright colors, storybooks, stuffed toys by the reading corner. But that floor had the most sightings. Staff members often reported seeing a little girl in a pale yellow dress, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with a ribbon in her hair. She'd stand near the picture books, looking up like she was trying to read the covers. If you approached her and asked, "Hi, where are your parents?" she'd just turn slightly, and then be gone, like someone switched her off. There was also a boy and an older man who appeared together. People described them as wearing old, worn-out clothes, like they were from the countryside. The boy in shorts and slippers, the old man in a faded, long-sleeved shirt and a straw hat he'd sometimes hold in his hands. They'd be seen walking slowly between the taller shelves, almost like they were browsing. Sometimes a customer would move aside to give them space, then realize a moment later that no one had actually passed by. Lila told me that more than one employee had reported feeling a light tug on their shirt on that floor, only to turn around and find nobody there. But children's laughter would drift in from somewhere, even when the floor was empty. Now, the 4th floor, that's where things got really unnerving. That floor had all the art books, design stuff, and some office supplies. It was quieter, and the shelves were tall. Staff believed a shapeshifter spirit lingered there. It didn't just appear as a random figure, it liked to copy the employees. Imagine this. You're restocking notebooks, and you see your coworker, Abby, walking toward the stairwell. You say, "Hey, can you help me with this box later?" And Abby nods and keeps walking. 5 minutes later, you bump into the real Abby coming up the stairs, holding a stack of price tags, and she says, "I've been in the basement this whole time. Why?" So many people had experiences like that the staff made their own rule. During closing time, nobody stays alone on the 4th floor. They finish their tasks fast, switch off the lights, and go down together. No lingering, no, "Oh, I'll just stay a bit to straighten the shelves." If someone looked like they were still up there after the lights were off, everyone double-checked who was actually accounted for downstairs before going back up. Funny enough, Lila said the 3rd floor felt the safest. That was the floor with most of the general fiction, self-help, and some magazines. As far as she knew, nobody had a clear ghost story from there. People joked that maybe the ghosts just weren't into bestsellers. The basement, though, the archive and clearance area, had its own cold spots, but Lila tried not to think about that too much. So yeah, those are the 2 stories that made me look at convenience stores and bookstores a little differently. I'm honestly curious, if you've ever worked in retail or know someone who has, what's the creepiest, ghostly experience you've heard about or actually gone through in a store? So, let me tell you about this story a close friend of mine, Rafi, shared with me a while back. He used to work in this big, slightly run-down department store in the city. 3 floors, flickering lights, that kind of place. The 3rd floor was the quietest, mostly office space and overstock, and according to everyone who worked there, it also had something else. Now, the staff all talked about it like it was normal, almost like a weird in-joke, a shape-shifting spirit that wandered around the 3rd floor. People said it liked to copy employees, take their appearance, their uniforms, even the way they walked. You'd pass by someone you swore you recognized, maybe even call their name, and only later find out they'd been on a different shift, or hadn't been in the building at all. At first, new hires thought it was just hazing. You know, "Welcome to the team, here's our resident ghost." But pretty soon, most of them had at least one moment that made them think twice. One of those people was a new supervisor we'll call Leo. When Leo first started, the team warned him right away. "Just so you know, the 3rd floor is weird. If you see someone up there who's not supposed to be working, don't panic. It might not be, well, a person." Leo just laughed it off. He was practical, no nonsense, the type who double-checks inventory and corrects labels that are slightly crooked. Ghosts were not on his list of things to worry about. But that changed pretty quickly. One night, the store was closing. Most of the lights were already off, and it was that in-between time when the building feels empty but not quite asleep. Leo was on the third floor alone, trying to finish an incident report. He'd had a rough day, short-staffed, a customer complaint, a delivery that arrived late, and he just wanted to get the paperwork done so he could go home. He was hunched over his desk, staring at the computer screen, when he got that prickly feeling on the back of his neck. You know, that sense that someone's watching you. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw someone standing near the far end of the room, just before the hallway that led to the stockroom. It looked like one of the senior staff, a guy named Andrew. Same haircut, same uniform, even the same slightly slouched posture. At first, Leo didn't think much of it. He just called out, "Hey Andrew, you still here?" No response. The figure just stood there, completely still. Leo turned back to his work, annoyed but trying to ignore it, until something tugged at his memory. He paused, then frowned. Andrew had messaged the group chat earlier that day. He'd taken emergency leave to look after his sick daughter. He was never even in the building. Leo slowly looked up again. This time, the figure had moved. It was walking away, slow, deliberate steps, heading toward one of the desks lined with office equipment. Label printers, staplers, a small scanner, piles of forms. It didn't look confused or lost. It looked purposeful. And then, right in front of Leo, as clear as day, it reached the desk and, with one forceful sweep of its arm, shoved almost everything onto the floor. The crash echoed across the third floor. Papers flew. The scanner clattered. A metal pen holder rolled away and hit a cabinet with a sharp ting. Leo shot up from his chair, heart pounding. But here's the thing. He wasn't just scared. He was exhausted, frustrated, fed up with the day, with the job, with the weird stories, all of it. And something in him just snapped. Leo grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a thick, heavy inventory binder, and without thinking twice, he hurled it at the figure. He watched it hit. The binder didn't pass through thin air or sail harmlessly to the wall. It smacked right into the figure's chest with a dull thud, like it had landed on something solid. The sound made his skin crawl, and that's when he lost it. He started shouting, not in fear, but in this exhausted, furious voice that came from somewhere deep inside. "You picked the worst night to screw with me, you hear me? I am not in the mood for this. You break anything else, and I swear I will find a way to get rid of you for good." He swore. A lot. He admitted later he probably used every curse word he knew, stringing them together in ways that didn't even make sense. But he meant every word. He wasn't asking it to stop. He was warning it. As he advanced, the figure started backing away. Step by step, it moved toward the far corner of the room, near a stack of unused display racks. The light from the emergency exit sign cast this sickly glow, and for a second, Leo could see its face clearly. It looked like Andrew, but wrong. The expression was blank, almost bored. No anger, no fear, nothing. Just watching. And then, right as it reached the corner, it shifted. Not like someone turning around, but like a reflection on water getting disturbed. The edges of its body blurred, its outline wavered, and it simply thinned out and faded until there was nothing there at all. No dramatic sound, no smoke, just gone. Leo stood there, breathing hard, binder still on the floor a few feet in front of him. The room felt heavy, like the air had thickened. He waited, half expecting something else to move, another crash, another figure appearing behind him. Nothing. He stayed a few more minutes, picking up the scattered office supplies, muttering under his breath. Then, before heading to the stairs, he turned back toward that corner and said, out loud, "I'm not afraid of you. You try that again, I'll make sure you really regret it." This is my floor now. Got it? After that night, according to Rafi, everything changed. The third floor used to have these little incidents. Footsteps when no one was up there, shadows crossing doorways, someone calling your name from down the hall. Occasionally, people would swear they saw a coworker who later turned out not to have been there at all. But after Leo's outburst, it all just stopped. No more lookalikes roaming the corridor. No more desks getting messed up. The weird cold spots people complained about, they went away too. The third floor was still a little eerie. Big buildings at night always are. But that specific presence wasn't felt anymore. Rafi said that, in the weeks that followed, whenever someone joked about the shapeshifter, one of the older staff would just shrug and say, "Talk to Leo. I think he scared it off." And Leo? He never bragged about it. If anyone asked, he'd just say, "Something was messing with my work. I told it to knock it off." And that was that. Hearing that story really made me think. We always talk about fear when it comes to strange things like that. Hauntings, spirits, whatever you want to call them. But sometimes, I wonder if there's something powerful in that moment when fear gets pushed aside by sheer exhaustion and anger. When someone decides, "I'm done being scared. I'm standing my ground." So now I'm curious about you. Have you ever been in a situation, supernatural or not, where you were just so fed up that you stopped being afraid and finally stood up to whatever was bothering you? Or do you know someone who reacted that way when something strange happened? So, let me start by saying this. In my family, my dad, Miguel, always treated my abilities like they were just another part of me, like having brown eyes or curly hair. My mom, Elena, on the other hand, hardcore skeptic. If she couldn't measure it, read about it in a manual, or buy it at a hardware store, it didn't exist. And yet, there were a few things even she couldn't talk herself out of. I was about 4 when we moved into this little old house in San Jose, California. It was one of those places with creaky wooden floors and a fireplace that looked more decorative than functional. One night, my parents were in the middle of one of their classic arguments in the living room. You know the kind. Voices low, sharp, circling around the same old sore spots. I was playing with my blocks near the fireplace when it happened. Out of nowhere, there was this crack, like something snapping inside the wall. A loose brick from the fireplace shifted and dropped straight through the floorboards with this ugly, splintering sound. It didn't just fall, it punched a hole right through into the crawl space below. My mom jumped back, hand over her mouth. Later, she told me that in that exact moment, she felt an icy wind wrap around her, like someone had draped a freezing, wet blanket over her shoulders. And over that, she heard 2 little girls crying, right in her ear, like they were standing behind her. She wouldn't go anywhere near that fireplace after that. My dad ended up covering the entire thing with wood paneling, so she didn't have to look at it. He was shaken, sure, but he and we were more used to things like that. It was just another weird night in a long line of weird nights. It was in that same house where I met the family that lived there before us. Well, lived is doing a lot of work in that sentence. They were a really gentle family, honestly. The father, he told me his name was Thomas, had this calm, tired kindness about him. The mom, Maria, always seemed busy, even in death. I'd see her fuzzing over invisible dust on the shelves or straightening objects that weren't actually moving. They had a few kids. I never quite got all their names right. They felt more like a blur of giggles and sad eyes. I'd sit in the hallway with my toys, and they'd gather around me, watching as I played. Sometimes they'd reach out, not quite touching, like they were trying to remember what it felt like to hold something solid. The strange part, the part that always stuck with me, was the way they looked. They were mostly like regular people, just slightly see-through, a bit faded at the edges, but I could see the faint marks of what had happened to them. Bruises, burns, a twisted arm, things that felt too heavy for a kid my age to understand. I didn't have the words then. I just knew they were hurt and that they were stuck. One afternoon, Thomas knelt down beside me while I was playing by the back window. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. He said, "Most of us are under the house." I remember blinking at him. Like, under the floor? He nodded slowly and pointed toward the side yard. "I'm over there, in a box, under the concrete by the fence, the part that looks wrong." Of course, I was a curious kid. You can't tell a 4-year-old something like that and expect them to just shrug it off. So one day, when my mom was busy in the kitchen and my dad was in the garage, I slipped outside with a little plastic shovel. I remember this mix of excitement and dread sitting in my chest. I knew I'd found it. But the concrete pinned the rest of it down, and no matter how much I dug, I couldn't get more than that one corner uncovered. My dad found me out there eventually, absolutely filthy, and carried me back inside before I could do any more damage. Not all the spirits there were kind, though. After the brick incident, things escalated. Not dramatically all at once, more like the house was slowly clearing its throat, getting ready to speak up. That's when the woman in black and white started showing up in the kitchen. The first time I saw her, I was sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal. The room went suddenly heavy and quiet, the way it does right before a storm. I looked up, and she was just there, near the sink. She was dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned uniform, dark skirt, white blouse, some kind of apron. Her face was pale and wet with tears, and her shoulders shook like she was sobbing, but no sound came out. She turned away from me and walked across the kitchen, her skirt brushing the floor without actually touching it, and disappeared straight into the wall that led to the garage. Then she did it again the next day, and again, and again. It got to the point where my dad couldn't take it anymore. He didn't want my mom or me constantly catching her out of the corner of our eye, so he took an old sheet and tacked it up over the kitchen entryway. It was a ridiculous solution, but somehow it helped. Out of sight, out of mind. At least a little. Still, I could feel her there, repeating that same sad walk over and over. The backyard, though, that was the worst. From the outside, it looked like a kid's dream. There was a great swing set, a little jungle gym, and this big rectangle of concrete with weird patterns in it where I could ride my tricycle or wobble around on my roller skates. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, I wanted nothing to do with it. The air back there always felt wrong to me. Heavy. Watching. If my parents told me to go play outside, I'd hover as close to the back door as I could and beg my dad or my older cousin Javier to come sit with me. If I had to be there alone, I'd last maybe 2 minutes before making some excuse to go back in. Behind our yard was another house, and along the shared fence, things liked to gather. I'd see shapes there, figures peeking between the slats or leaning against the boards. They weren't like Thomas and his family. There was a different energy to them, something sharp, something hungry. They would call out to me without moving their mouths, trying to get my attention, trying to start conversations I wanted no part of. I never answered them. Everything in me screamed not to. Sometimes the temperature would suddenly drop. One second I'd be sweating in the California sun, and the next, I'd be wrapping my arms around myself, teeth chattering. The wind would pick up, bending the trees until their branches scratched and scraped against each other with this awful, dry, whispering sound. And then the world would go quiet. No cars, no birds. Even the big dog next door, this usually hyper, bark-at-every-leaf shepherd mix, would go completely silent. He'd just stand there, stiff, staring at the fence with his ears flat, like he saw the same things I did and wanted nothing to do with them either. In those moments, I'd feel all the little hairs on my arms stand straight up. I'd stand frozen on the concrete, skates or no skates, and count my breaths until I could move again. As soon as I could, I'd bolt back into the house, heart pounding, trying to act normal so my parents wouldn't ask too many questions. My dad and I, we learned to live with it. We made jokes. We adjusted. We moved a sheet here and a piece of wood there. My mom, she tried so hard to explain it all away. But every once in a while, I'd catch her glancing at the covered fireplace or hesitating near that kitchen doorway, and I'd know. Even the skeptics hear the crying sometimes. So, let me tell you about the night I realized I could see things I really did not want to see. My family's home base is in Lafayette, Louisiana, but a couple of weeks ago my parents called and said, "Hey, we're heading up to Chicago for a few days. Mostly work, but we'll squeeze in a little vacation. Come meet us." Since I live in Boston now, I figured, why not turn it into a mini getaway and arrive a day earlier than them? I booked this hotel on the edge of the loop, not far from the river. Nothing fancy, just one of those business hotels you forget the name of as soon as you check out. The big landmark for me was this huge Target across the street and a bunch of late-night food spots sprinkled around. I got into the area around 7 p.m. First thing I did was drop my luggage in the room. Just tossed my bag by the bed, checked that the key card worked, that sort of thing. Since I wasn't seeing my parents until the next morning, I thought, okay, solo dinner tonight. That's when I realized I'd forgotten my phone charger. Of course. So I headed out, walking toward the Target. As I'm crossing the street, this group comes toward me. A few women dressed like they just walked out of some after-hours club. Glittery dresses, heels too high to be practical, and a handful of guys hovering around them. They weren't exactly subtle, laughing too loud, talking over each other, just big energy. The weird part was how they walked. They sort of spread out across the sidewalk, like a moving wall. I kept thinking, should I step aside? Are they going to part or just run into me? But right before we would have crossed paths, they all abruptly turned off toward a side street, not even glancing at me. I shrugged it off, went into Target, grabbed a charger, paid, and then picked up something quick to eat from a Walgreens nearby. A sad little sandwich, a snack, and a drink. Back at the hotel, I ate in my room, turned on the TV, and let some random cooking show play in the background while I scrolled on my half-charged phone. Time slipped by, and before I knew it, it was close to 11 p.m. And of course, after an hour of watching people make perfect ramen and fancy burgers, I started to get hungry again. I remembered seeing another late-night place, this tiny 24-hour deli a block from the hotel, so I decided to go grab something small. Nothing dramatic, just, I could use some chips or something. I took the elevator down to the lobby and walked out through the revolving door. And the moment I stepped out onto the sidewalk, I saw them. The same group from earlier. The glittery dresses, the guys lingering around them. Same faces, same outfits. But this time, everything felt off. They were standing half in the street, half on the curb, yelling at each other. Why? Why? Over and over, voices cracking. Why me? Why? It was loud enough that people were glancing over and then immediately looking away, pretending not to see anything. I tried to ignore them, honestly. I kept walking, eyes down, thinking, wow, they're really going at it. And also, man, they're annoying. I didn't want to get involved. But then the shouting got sharper, like it hit a nerve. Why? Why? Something in me slipped, and without meaning to, I glanced over. The second I made eye contact, a cold rush went down my back. All of them, every single one of them shouting, why, had turned their heads and were staring straight at me. I stopped walking. My body just locked up. One of the women, the one in this short, sparkly red dress, suddenly screamed, "Why?" It was so loud and raw, my heart started racing. My brain went into overdrive. Should I run? Should I call the cops? Should I yell for help? All of that flashed through my mind in maybe a second. These people are not alive. In that split second when I'd looked away and then looked back, they had changed. The guy on the edge of the group, his shirt was soaked in what looked like blood. One of the women just ended at the waist. From the hips down, there was nothing. Another figure behind them looked like a burnt silhouette, like a human shape made of charcoal, skin cracked and blackened. No one around them reacted. Cars drove past. A couple walked by, barely glancing in that direction like nothing was wrong. Then the woman in red said, in this hoarse, broken voice, "Why? Why did I have to die?" And I felt the words go straight through me. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that so clearly. I don't know what possessed me, but I actually answered her, out loud. I said, it kind of looks like you already died. Maybe you'd feel better if you moved on?" As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. They all just stared at me, faces twisted, repeating, "Why? Why? Why?" That was enough. I turned around and bolted back toward the hotel. I ran through the doors, hit the elevator button like my life depended on it, and jumped inside the moment it opened. The elevator had these glass doors and a glass back, so you could see out into the hallway as you went up. Very chic, normally. That night, it felt like the worst design decision ever made. The elevator started rising. Second floor. Third floor. As we passed the fourth floor, my eyes flicked toward the glass without me wanting them to. They were there. The group was standing right in front of where the doors would have opened on that floor. The woman in red, the half-body girl, the charred shape, all of them staring in at me as the elevator slid by. I almost started crying right then. The elevator kept going. Fifth floor. They were there again. Same positions, same hollow eyes, but now their mouths were moving, whispering just loud enough for me to hear through the glass. "Why?" Soft, dragging, like the word had weight. By the time the doors opened on the seventh floor, my floor, I didn't wait for them to fully slide apart. I squeezed through and sprinted down the hallway, fumbling my keycard at the door like in a bad horror movie. Once I was inside, I locked everything, door, latch, whichever extra thing I could slide or turn. I turned on every light. I didn't even bother with the cooking show this time. I put on some late-night talk show rerun, something ridiculous and loud, just so there was noise that wasn't my own heartbeat. I sat on the bed shaking, telling myself, "You're fine. You're just tired. You imagined it." Over and over. At some point, pure exhaustion knocked me out. When I woke up, sunlight was pouring into the room. The terror felt smaller. Not gone, but like a bad dream that dissolves in daylight. I packed my things, got ready to check out, and took the elevator down. As we started descending, I told myself, "Don't look. Just don't." But curiosity is cruel. We glided past the sixth floor. Nothing. Then the fifth. That's when I noticed dark streaks on the wall next to the elevator doors. Grayish, blackened marks smeared around the frame, like burn or smoke stains. My stomach dropped. And then we reached the fourth floor. There was this split second of silence, and then, bang! The woman in the red dress slammed against the glass from the outside, right at my eye level. Her skin was burned and peeling now, her arms streaked with something dark. Her eyes were pitch black, no whites, no pupils, just two empty, bottomless pits, and they locked straight onto mine. She snarled, "Why me? Why not you?" and as I watched, her body seemed to sink down, disappearing into the floor like it was water. One moment she was pressed against the glass. The next, there was nothing there. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby like everything was normal. I stepped out and just stood there in the middle of the floor, my suitcase in my hand, completely stunned. People were checking out, grabbing coffee, scrolling their phones. No one had heard the bang. No one had seen her. As I walked toward the front desk, one thought kept looping through my head. Do ghosts even show up this early in the morning? But what won't leave my mind, even now, are her eyes. Those completely black, hollow-looking eyes, filled with anger and hurt, like she was stuck in the exact moment her life ended. Sometimes I wonder what happened in that building. Was there a fire? A crash? Something violent on those middle floors? I don't know. I've tried to look it up, but part of me is almost afraid of finding out. Anyway, that's the story my friend Jordan told me. And the way he looked when he said, "Why not you?" I still get chills just remembering it. So, when I was a kid, maybe 7 or 8, I had this constant feeling that I wasn't alone. Not like, oh, I have a big imagination, but this heavy, prickly sense that something was right behind me, just out of sight. I'd be playing on the floor or reading in bed, and suddenly feel like someone was watching me from the corner of the room. The hair on my arms would stand up, my heart would start racing, and I'd freeze, just sure that if I turned around too fast I'd see something. Nights were the worst. I was terrified of the dark and of being left alone in a room. I'd make my mom leave the hallway light on, and even then I'd lie there, staring at the doorway, feeling like someone was standing just inside the shadow. Sometimes the air around me would feel so charged, like static electricity waiting to jump off skin, and I'd swear someone was standing right next to the bed, leaning over me. One night, it got very real. I jolted awake, no idea why, and instantly knew I was awake, not dreaming. And there, right beside my bed, was a woman in a chair. The weird thing was, my room didn't have a chair. But there she was, sitting in this old wooden armchair like it had always been there. She had silver hair pinned up in a loose bun, glasses low on her nose, and she was quietly crocheting something pale and soft. A shawl, maybe. The yarn rested on her lap, and the chair rocked in this slow, gentle rhythm. She didn't look mean at all. If anything, she looked kind. There was this faint little smile on her face, almost like she was watching over me, just keeping me company while I slept. But you can imagine, I was a terrified kid. So the only thing my body knew how to do was scream. I shrieked, loud and sharp, and the second I did, she and the chair were gone. Just gone. I was sitting upright in bed, heart pounding, staring at the exact empty space where she'd been. The room was exactly how it always was. No chair, no yarn, no old woman. But I knew, with that awful clarity you get in those moments, that I had been wide awake. After that, I completely unraveled. I started having panic attacks, real ones. I'd refuse to sleep alone. I'd cry if the lights were off. I kept insisting to my parents that someone, something, was following me, that there was a presence in my room. I was so on edge that even a creak in the floorboards could send me over the edge. My parents were, honestly, they were exhausted and worried. They tried everything: night lights, music, checking under the bed, checking the closet, staying with me until I fell asleep. Nothing helped. I couldn't calm down. Finally, one night, my mom sat me down at the kitchen table. She looked at me, and I could see on her face that she was trying to figure out how to say something that would make sense to a scared little kid. She said, very gently, "Maybe it was a ghost." You know, just casually. And for some reason, instead of making it worse, it made everything click for me. A ghost. A someone, not just bad feelings. She told me that if it was a ghost, it probably didn't want to hurt me, that some spirits just hang around. And then she told me there was a way to make it stop bothering me. She said, if you don't want it there, you have to tell it. Out loud. You set a boundary. You're allowed to do that. Now, as a kid, I took my mom's words like scripture. So I marched back into my bedroom, the one that always felt full of that strange presence, and I decided I was going to end it. I don't want you to follow me anymore. I don't want to see you. I don't want you in my room. Please leave me alone. I said it again, louder that time. I remember the sweat running down my back, the way my throat felt dry and tight. I just stood there, hands balled up, repeating in my head, go away, go away, go away. Then I waited. I cracked one eye open and looked around, half expecting something dramatic to happen. A gust of wind, a light flicker, something. But the room was just quiet, ordinary. I stood there a little longer, listening to the silence, feeling the air around me. And very slowly, I realized something. That heavy, prickly feeling I'd carried for so long was just gone. The room felt lighter. I felt lighter. For the first time in a long time, I could take a deep breath without that tightness in my chest. From that night on, things changed. I still got spooked sometimes, what kid doesn't? But that constant sense of being hunted, stalked, watched, it never came back in the same way. I grew up, I got older, and that whole chapter of my life sort of faded into the weird childhood stuff category in my mind. Fast forward to me as a young woman. I went to visit my grandmother one weekend. She lived in this small, cozy house that always smelled faintly of lavender and old books. At some point, she pulled out this big, heavy photo album from her living room cabinet, one of those old ones with the thick pages and plastic sheet covers that crinkle when you turn them. She said, "Come here, I want to show you what it was like when I was little." So we sat side by side on the couch, flipping through these sepia-toned photos of her family farm, fields, animals, the house she grew up in. There were faces of relatives whose names I kept forgetting as she told me stories about them. Who married who was a troublemaker, who baked the best pies. Then we turned a page, and my eyes landed on one particular photo. It was a picture of a front porch. A few people were standing around. Men in suspenders, women in simple dresses, but in the middle of the frame, there was a woman sitting in a chair. My breath caught in my throat. She was sitting in a wooden chair, her ankles crossed, with an unfinished blanket or shawl draped over her knees. In her hands were knitting needles, frozen mid-stitch. Her hair was pulled back in that same kind of soft bun, and she had this almost invisible smile on her face, small, gentle, like she knew a secret but wasn't going to tell. And the way she was looking at the camera, it felt exactly like the way the woman in my room had looked at me. My heart skipped, and for a second it felt like it forgot how to beat altogether. My mouth went dry. I pointed at the woman in the photo, my finger actually trembling a little, and I managed to croak out, Who is that?" My grandmother squinted at the picture, then said casually, "Oh, that's my grandmother. Your great-great-grandma Anna. Why?" I just stared. It was her, the woman from the chair, older, grainier, locked in a photograph from decades before I was born, but still, unmistakably her. So I told my grandmother the story, the panic, the presence, the woman in the chair, the crocheting, that night I screamed. I spilled everything, all in this breathless rush. My grandmother listened quietly, her eyes soft, and when I finished, she let out this little chuckle and a sigh. "Well," she said, "she's still making her rounds then." I blinked. What do you mean? She looked off toward the hallway, like she could almost see someone standing there. She still visits me sometimes, my grandmother added. I don't see her the way you two did. I just feel the edge of the bed dip, or a little tap on my shoulder when I'm alone in the kitchen. I say hello, and then I get on with my day. Then she looked back at me and smiled, very gently. Some of us, she said, just have the sight a little stronger. But she's family. She isn't here to hurt you. And sitting there, with that old photo album on my lap and my grandmother's hand resting on top of it, I felt something settle inside me. That childhood terror, that sense of being hunted, it shifted into something else. Not exactly comfort, but recognition. Like all along, I hadn't been followed by some nameless, faceless thing. I'd been watched over by a woman in a chair who loved knitting and who apparently never quite stopped checking in on her family. So, hey, let me just tell this the way it happened, okay? This was a few years back, but I can still feel it in my chest when I think about it. It was late, one of those warm nights that sits on your skin, and I was over at my neighbor's place. Everyone on our street calls her Aunt Mira, even though she's not actually anybody's aunt. She's older, tiny, always smelling like tea and wood smoke, and the kind of person who shows up at your door with soup before you even know you're sick. There were 4 of us in her kitchen that night. We had the windows cracked open, a pot of chamomile on the table, just talking. Silly stuff, nothing deep. It was one of those slow evenings where you feel safe and bored in the best way. And then we heard music. Not phone music, not some car going by with the bass up too high. It sounded live. There were drums, and what I swear was a fiddle or maybe a violin, and this low humming like a choir that can't quite remember the words. It wasn't loud, but it was clear, like it was coming from the backyard and very far away at the same time. I remember the hairs on my arms standing up, and before I could say anything, Aunt Mira just went very still. Her hand stopped halfway to her teacup. She glanced toward the back door and said, very softly, "Don't go outside." Just like that, no explanation. I kinda laughed, like, what? Why? You know when you think someone's being superstitious and you're trying not to be rude? That was me. But the look on her face shut me right up. I've seen that woman burn her fingers on a hot pan without flinching. She looked scared. The music kept going, slow and circling and strange, and we drifted to the kitchen window that looked out over her yard. Behind her house, there's this empty lot, just grass and a couple of trees, usually nothing interesting except stray cats. That night, though, there was this low haze lying over the ground. Not thick, not movie-style fog, just a pale, drifting mist, glowing a little in the moonlight. And in that mist, there were shapes. At first, I honestly thought it was kids, like teenagers doing some kind of weird dance prank or TikTok thing, I don't know. But the longer I stared, the less sense it made. They weren't solid. That's the part I still hate thinking about. They looked like people someone had sketched in smoke. You could see the trees through them when they moved. Some of them were wrong. One had an arm that faded out halfway down. Another didn't seem to be walking so much as gliding, just a few inches above the ground. And one, I will never forget this. One shape was swaying to the music with no clear head at all, just shoulders and that dark, empty space above them where it should have been. In the center of all of this were 2 clearer figures, standing side by side like a couple. The man looked like he was in an old-fashioned suit, the kind you see in black and white wedding photos. The woman was in something light, maybe not pure white, but a pale dress that moved like it was underwater. They were more solid than the rest, but even they looked faded, like memories someone had tried to hold on to too long. The others were circling them, stepping and turning in time with the music. They didn't look angry or wild. That almost made it worse. It felt calm. Calm and completely wrong. Beside me, I heard Aunt Mira whisper, almost to herself, "It's their wedding again." My stomach dropped. "Again?" I asked her. "What do you mean, again?" She shook her head, like she'd already said too much. "They won't come in while I have guests," she murmured. "Just stay here, please. Don't call out to them. Don't answer if they call you." 2 of my friends were with us. Jonah, who jokes about everything, and Lila, who always wants to prove things aren't scary. Jonah snorted and said, "Come on, this is obviously someone with a projector or something. Maybe a speaker in the lot." Lila nodded, already halfway toward the door. "Yeah, I'm gonna go see how they're doing this. It's actually kind of cool." Aunt Mira stepped in front of them. I've never seen her move that fast. "Don't," she said. Her voice cracked a little. "Please, children, don't go out there. Not tonight." Jonah rolled his eyes. "We'll be fine, I promise. 2 minutes. If it's ghosts, I'll bring one back for tea, yeah?" He grinned at her, but she didn't smile. "I am not joking," she said. "They remember who steps into their circle." I could see his expression waver, just a little, but pride is a stupid thing. He shrugged her off gently. Lila squeezed my shoulder and said, "Relax, we'll prove it's some creepy neighbor with a sound system. You'll feel better." I didn't follow. I should have grabbed them, yelled, something, but I didn't. I just stood there with my hand on the back of a chair, watching out the window. They walked across the yard, side by side. The grass was still, the air too warm for that hour. The music kept going, and then, just as they reached the edge of the mist, it stopped. Cut off. One beat, and everything went silent. All the figures turned at once. I can't explain how something half made of fog can turn, but they did. Every smoky outline, every broken limb, every blurred face turned toward Jonah and Lila. Even the headless one shifted like it was looking straight at them. Then they moved. They didn't rush or leap. They just drifted, all together, toward my friends. The mist rose up, thicker, wrapping around the 2 of them like someone pulling curtains closed. I heard myself say, "Guys?" like they could hear me. My voice sounded so small. For 1 second, literally 1 second, they were silhouettes in the haze, and then the fog folded over itself. The music came back, a little louder, like someone had turned the volume up. When the mist cleared, Jonah and Lila were gone. No scream, no struggle, no falling, no running. Just gone. One heartbeat they were there, next heartbeat they weren't. The circle was complete again, moving around the couple as if nothing had happened. I don't remember deciding to move, but suddenly we were outside. Me and Aunt Mira and the 4th guy who'd stayed frozen in his chair the whole time. The lot felt colder than it had any right to. There were no footprints leading in, no scuff marks, no sign of anybody. The music faded like someone walking away down a long corridor, and the shapes thinned out, losing their edges until they were just fog. Then even the fog was gone. We called the police. Of course we did. There were searches. Dogs, flashlights, people shouting their names. Statements, questions, suspicion. You can imagine how it went. "What do you mean they disappeared in a fog? Were they drinking? Are you sure they left the house?" On and on. For a long time after, I caught myself wondering if I'd just snapped. If we all had some kind of shared breakdown. But you know what? Shared hallucinations don't erase people's phone numbers from your life. They don't stop someone from ever posting again, ever making another call, ever walking through your door. Nothing turned up. No bodies. No footprints past the lot. No camera footage of them leaving the street. Just nothing. Years have passed since that night. I moved away eventually, but I still visit sometimes. Aunt Mira's older now, more fragile, but she still makes too much tea and presses food into my hands when I go. She stared out the same window we'd stood at that night. "Since I was younger than you," she said. "Sometimes they come. Different years, different months, always with the mist, always with the music. Always the same bride and groom, never growing older. They dance, and if someone steps too close, the circle opens." I swallowed. "Why didn't you move?" She gave this tired little smile. "You think they stay only with the land? They follow the blood. My mother used to say we live under their promise, so I keep my lights on. I keep my house full when I can." She looked at me then. "It is better to watch them from behind glass than to be watched from inside the ring." She told me that on some nights she still hears the drums. Sometimes she looks out and there are more figures than before, the circle thicker. People she doesn't recognize. And every now and then, she says, she sees familiar faces in that crowd. I didn't want to ask, but I did. "Have you seen them? Jonah and Lila?" She nodded once, slow. "They stand near the edge," she said. "They look happy, if you only look quick. Like photos. But their eyes do not move. Their smiles do not reach anywhere." I didn't sleep well for weeks after that. Look, I know how this sounds. Spirits, cursed weddings, disappearing in fog. It all sounds like something somebody made up for a late-night radio show. I don't blame you if your first instinct is to explain it away. I used to be that person. Ghost stories were just stories. Creepy fun, nothing more. I'm not that person anymore. I don't know what I saw that night. I don't know what took my friends or where they went. I don't know why some old promise or ritual or tragedy keeps replaying itself behind my neighbor's house. All I know is this. If you're ever up late and you hear distant music that doesn't sound like it's coming from anywhere sensible, real drums, real strings, voices humming along, and you look outside and there's a low, slow fog that wasn't there a minute ago, do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Don't be clever. Don't go prove it's nothing. Just lock the door. Stay inside. Good evening, guys. It's your boy, Mr. Paranormal M, back at it again. Quick update. The bee sting drama is finally over. It's gone down a lot, so I'm not suffering anymore. Comment where you're watching from and tell me what it's like over there. Hot, cold, raining, spooky fog. I want to know it all. Every night around this time, I get that little spark of excitement because I love grabbing the mic, hanging out with you, and sharing creepy, supernatural stories from all over the place. And honestly, it makes me really happy knowing you're cozy, relaxed, maybe lying in bed or on the couch, just vibing and listening to my voice. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our spooky storytime sessions. All right, I'll stop teasing you about tonight's stories. Grab your blanket, get comfy, maybe dim the lights a little, and let's get started. So, let me tell you this story the way it was told to me. Like we're just sitting together after a long shift. I used to work in this old department store, 4 floors high. The kind of place where the lights always felt a bit too dim and the air conditioning never quite worked right. Everyone on staff knew one thing. You didn't like being alone on the 3rd floor. That's where it was. We called it the shapeshifter. though nobody ever agreed on what it really was. All we knew was that it loved copying people. You'd be doing inventory, glance down an aisle, and swear you saw a coworker who wasn't scheduled that day just standing there. Then you'd check the roster and realize, nope, they were off or homesick. It was this creepy, quiet game it played with us. When our new supervisor, Marco, joined the store, we warned him right away. You know how it is with new people. You don't know if they'll laugh it off or take you seriously. At first, he thought we were pulling his leg. He'd just grin and say something like, "Yeah, sure, a copycat ghost. Very funny." But a few weeks in, he stopped laughing. One night, we were closing late after a busy sale. Most of the lights on the third floor were already off, just a few still on near the office where Marco was finishing some reports. I was downstairs doing a final check on the registers when he had his encounter. Later, he told us exactly what happened. He was sitting at his desk, exhausted, shoulders killing him, surrounded by piles of paperwork and a bunch of random office stuff. Staplers, pricing guns, barcode scanners, a small receipt printer, all crammed onto the table. You know that kind of tired where even the ticking of a clock feels too loud? That was him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw someone standing in the doorway. It looked like Lena, one of our part-timers. Same ponytail, same uniform, same way she stood with her arms folded. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, perfectly still. Marco glanced at the clock and frowned because he knew Lena had called in sick that day. But he was so drained, he didn't even question it at first. He just said, without looking up, "What are you doing here? Go home. Your shift ended hours ago." No answer. When he finally looked properly, the figure turned just a little, like it was acknowledging him, and then started walking slowly toward the far corner of the office area. He said that's when something in his stomach dropped. The walk was wrong. Too slow, too smooth, like it wasn't really walking, just gliding. Then it happened. Right as the figure reached the corner, every loose thing on his desk, the stack of folders, a cup full of pens, the staplers, even the little printer, all of it shoved forward and crashed onto the floor. Not like something got knocked by accident, but like an invisible hand had just swept across the desk in one angry motion. The noise echoed across the whole floor. Marco jumped up, heart racing, and for a second, he was actually scared. But then it hit him. Lena wasn't even in the building. No one else was on that floor. And that's when fear turned into pure, fed-up anger. He told us, I'd had it. I was tired, behind on my reports, and I wasn't about to let some, whatever it was, push me around. So he reached for the thick store ledger, this heavy, old record book we kept for manual entries, and without overthinking, he hurled it straight at the figure. He said it hit with a solid thud, like it hit a real body. Then Marco just exploded. He started shouting, every curse he could think of, voice echoing through the floor. "You picked the wrong time to mess with me," he yelled. "I'm not scared of you. You want to throw things around? Try me." He wasn't trying to be brave. He was just done. Done with being creeped out. Done with the stories. Done with feeling watched while he worked late. As he stormed toward it, the figure slowly backed away into that same corner. Step by step, it got dimmer, like it was fading out of focus. And then, right before it reached the wall, it just vanished. No dramatic noise, no puff of smoke. It was there, and then it wasn't. Marco stood there, breathing hard, heart pounding, hands still shaking from the adrenaline. But instead of running, he did something that still makes me laugh a little when I think about it. He pointed at the empty corner and said, very clearly, "Listen, if you try that again, if you so much as move a paper on my desk, I swear I'll find a way to get rid of you for good. Do you understand me?" And then he just went back to his chair, picked everything up off the floor, straightened his papers, and finished his report like it was any other night. Here's the strange part. After that, the story stopped. No more glimpses of co-workers who weren't on shift. No more figures at the end of the aisle. No more weird footsteps on the third floor after closing. It was like, after that night, the whole floor went quiet. Every now and then, when we stayed late, someone would joke, "Hey, maybe Marco scared it off." And honestly, I kind of think he did. So now I can't help wondering, and I'm genuinely curious about you here. Have you ever had something weird, something you couldn't explain, try to scare you or mess with you? And instead of getting terrified, you just got angry and stood your ground? Or do you know someone who reacted like that? Because after hearing Marco's story, I started to think, maybe sometimes the thing on the third floor just needs to be told it picked the wrong person to bother. So, let me tell you about a couple of stories that still give me chills whenever I think about working in retail at night. The first one is about my friend Marco. He used to work the late shift at this small convenience store tucked at the corner of a busy intersection. You know the kind, bright at the front, humming refrigerators, but once you go past the shelves and into the back, it suddenly feels too quiet. Behind the store, there was a narrow hallway that led to the stockroom and a tiny break room. The staff all said that area was haunted. Years before Marco started, an employee had apparently died in his sleep during a graveyard shift. They found him early in the morning, still in his uniform, slumped on one of the old couches in the break room. People said he never really left. Marco told me that sometimes, when he went to get extra boxes of drinks, he'd see someone standing at the far end of the stockroom. At first, he'd think it was another employee. Same green uniform vest, same cap. But when he looked up properly, the face would be wrong. Either blurred out, like someone smeared it in a photo, or just strangely empty. No eyes, no mouth. Just the outline of a person who wasn't supposed to be there. The manager, a woman named Ms. Reyes, was really devout and decided to set up this small altar just outside the break room door. There were candles, saint images, fresh flowers every Monday, and even a cup of black coffee some mornings, because someone said that's what the man used to drink. The idea was to pray for his soul, ask him to move on, and also to, keep the rest of the staff from quitting. But even with the altar, weird things kept happening. Marco said he'd leave the stockroom lights off when he was up front at the counter, but every now and then, he'd notice this faint glow leaking from under the door. When he went to check, the main light would still be off, but the break room TV, which was never plugged in anymore, would be giving off this dull, bluish flicker. One time he swore he heard someone shuffling around inside, opening plastic wrappers, like someone was having a late snack on break. He only lasted, maybe a month and a half at that job? The last straw was when he walked into the break room and saw someone sitting on the couch, hunched forward. He thought it was one of the new guys and started to say, "Hey, your shift ended already, right?" The figure slowly turned toward him, and there was that same uniform, same nameplate style, but where the face should have been, it was just blank. Like the air was shaped into a head, but nothing was there. Marco said he ran out so fast he didn't even bother clocking out. He called the manager from outside the store and told her he wouldn't be coming back. And honestly, I don't blame him. The second story is from another friend of mine, Anna. She worked at this big, premium bookstore in the city center. It had 4 floors and a mezzanine, plus a basement level that connected to the mall parking. On the surface, it was all bright lights, soft music, and the smell of new books. But the staff all had their own ghost stories. On the ground floor, near the back entrance where deliveries came in, the night guards talked about something they called a replay. They didn't see an actual ghost, like a transparent person floating around. Instead, they would sometimes see a scene unfold for a few seconds, then vanish. Up on the second floor, where the kids and teens section was, things were less violent but somehow creepier. Staff and customers had reported seeing a little girl in a pale yellow dress, wandering alone between the shelves, her hair in short, neat curls. When someone tried to approach her, she'd turn the corner, and then just wouldn't be there anymore. There were also two other figures people mentioned, a boy and an older man. The boy always looked like he had just come in from the fields, simple shirt, shorts, bare feet. The old man wore these worn-out farmer-style clothes and a straw hat. The strange part was that they were almost always seen together, walking side by side, like a grandfather and grandson out for a stroll, quietly weaving in and out of the shelves. Sometimes, security would replay the CCTV footage after a customer complained about someone following them. On the screen, they'd see the customer moving through the aisle, glancing back nervously. But no one would be behind them. No boy, no old man. Just empty space. The fourth floor was reserved mostly for arts, design, and rare books. That was the one that scared the staff the most. They said there was something up there that liked to copy people. Anna told me about nights during closing time when everyone would be doing last-minute shelving. She'd be straightening up a display and hear footsteps behind her. Then she'd hear a familiar voice, maybe her supervisor or one of her closest coworkers, say her name, casual and normal, like, "Hey Anna, you almost done?" She'd turn around, ready to answer, and the floor would be empty. A few minutes later, she'd bump into the real coworker downstairs and ask, "Did you just call me from the art section?" And the answer was always no. After a while, the staff made it a rule not to answer anyone calling their name on the fourth floor, unless they could actually see the person's face. Because of that, closing routines became almost like a race. As soon as it was time to shut down, they'd switch off the air conditioning up there, dim the lights, and everyone would go down together. No lingering. No, "I'll catch up later." Nobody wanted to be the last one alone on that floor, with something that could mimic their friends' voices. Funny enough, Anna always said the third floor was the safest. That was where the general fiction and literature sections were. She joked that maybe the ghosts there were too busy reading to bother anyone. No major encounters, no strange flickering scenes, just the usual creaks and pops of an old building settling at night. Whenever I hear their stories, I can't help but wonder how many people in retail have their own versions of this. Late night shelves, humming lights, and that feeling that you're not really alone, even when the store is supposed to be closed. And it makes me think, if you've ever worked or known someone who's worked in retail, how many of those just your imagination moments were actually something or someone else? So I always joke that I have more ghost stories than birthday candles. I'm 24 now, but this all started when I was really little. I've pretty much felt haunted for as long as I can remember. One day I might tell you everything, but for now, I'll just stick to a couple of moments that still give me chills when I think about them. Back then, my family and I lived in Nevada, just a regular suburban neighborhood, nothing spooky looking about it at all. We moved into this brand new 2-story house when I was around 8, almost 9. Fresh paint, new carpet, that weird, new house smell. You'd think a place like that would be the last spot to be haunted, right? But honestly, most of the worst stuff I've experienced happened in that house. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't just some random, harmless ghost. It felt darker. I still wonder what the land used to be. Burial ground, battleground, something. I don't know. I just know it didn't feel clean. I'm going to use fake names here, by the way. My family's super split on this stuff. Some of them don't believe in ghosts at all and think it's all devil worship or nonsense, and I don't feel like arguing with anyone at Thanksgiving. So, I'll call my mom Elena, my dad Mark, my middle sister Lena, my little sister Mia, and my cousin Jade. Here's the first weird thing. I had never, ever sleepwalked in my life until we moved into that house. And the strangest part? It only happened when I slept over at other people's houses. Anytime I had a sleepover at a friend's place, the next morning they'd be like, you were totally sleepwalking last night. One friend's mom even complained to my parents once, saying I'd been stomping around their hallway for like an hour while everyone was trying to sleep and that I needed to get it under control. Like I was doing it on purpose. But let me back up and introduce you to what we think was our ghost. Honestly, it felt more like a poltergeist. This thing loved messing with stuff. It would move things around, flicker the lights, and walk around at night when everyone was in bed. And you can think I'm dramatic if you want, but both my mom and my dad saw things too. It wasn't just me. One of its favorite tricks was with our family computer downstairs. My sisters and I used to play The Sims 3 on it all the time. To start the game, you had to turn on the computer, log in, open the launcher, click play, and then wait for it to load. It wasn't something you could just accidentally bump. In the middle of the night, we'd hear that familiar Sims music and all the little sound effects. My mom or dad would get up, burst into our rooms, and check if any of us were missing, assuming someone had snuck downstairs to play after bedtime. But we'd all be in our beds, half asleep and annoyed. They'd go down to turn the computer off, and every single time, they told us the same thing. The game wasn't just on the menu. The Sims were actually moving and doing things, like someone was playing with them. You'd think, okay, maybe it's just a friendly ghost who wants to enjoy some 21st century entertainment. But that was really just the opening act. Now, back to the sleepwalking. One night, my family was hanging out at my aunt's house, and my sisters and I decided to have a sleepover with my cousin Jade. My parents left us there and drove back home with Mia to grab some clothes and stuff for the night. As they pulled into the driveway, my mom noticed a light on upstairs. My mom, Elena, is intense about turning lights off when we leave the house. Like, she'll do a full patrol before we walk out the door. So she looks up and goes, "Why is her bedroom light on?" Meaning my room. And my dad goes, "I don't know. I turned everything off. It definitely wasn't on when we pulled out of the driveway." My mom starts freaking out. My dad hits the garage button, grabs a baseball bat from inside, and goes in to check the entire house. Every room, every closet, the garage. He's on the phone with my mom the whole time. He comes back out and says, "There's nobody in there, and your bedroom light wasn't on. The light that's on is Mia's, on the side of the house. You just couldn't see it clearly from the front." They are both totally unsettled, but they grab our clothes and bring them back to my aunt's. They tell us the whole story, and I remember just sitting there with this uneasy feeling in my stomach. That night, I had one of my usual migraines. Back then, I used to get them almost every day, so I went to bed a little early while everyone else stayed up talking. The next morning, Jade looks at me and goes, "You were sleepwalking last night." Then Lena, my middle sister, backs her up. They tell me what happened. Jade says she got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. When she stepped out into the hallway, she saw me walking in slow circles, through the kitchen, into the hallway, back through the kitchen, like I was following some invisible path. She called my name. I stopped in the kitchen and just stood there, staring at her, not saying anything, just staring. She went to the bathroom, came back out, and I was still standing there, in the same spot, still staring at her. When she got back into bed, she heard me start walking around again. Later, Lena tells me she got up to go to the bathroom too, and saw the exact same thing. Me doing that weird loop through the kitchen and hallway. And I just keep thinking about that timing. The lights freaking my parents out at home, and then me sleepwalking like some glitching NPC the very same night. Maybe it was all a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. I honestly don't know. But it still makes my skin crawl. Anyway, that was creepy, but it wasn't the worst. There's one night that still makes me feel sick to my stomach even to talk about it. It's the reason I have to sleep with my bedroom door closed now. I had just started 7th grade. It was a weekend, pretty late at night. I was in my room with the door wide open, sitting on my bed, making an edit for Vine on my laptop. Yeah, I was one of those kids. I kept hearing heavy footsteps in the hallway, not like a gentle walk, like stomping. I figured it was Lena or Mia being dramatic, so I ignored it. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom downstairs. "Is that you? Can you please be a little more quiet?" I texted back, "It's not me." And as I'm typing that, I look up and glance across the hall into Mia's room. Her door is kind of diagonal from mine, so I can see into it from where I'm sitting. And I see something. There's a dark figure standing over her bed. You could tell it was facing her, like it was just staring down at her while she slept. It wasn't detailed, more like a solid shadow in the shape of a person. I remember my brain trying to protect me, like, "Nope, we're not doing this." So I turn over in my bed and face the wall, pretending I didn't see anything. But of course, I couldn't leave it alone. I look back. Now the figure isn't by her bed anymore. It's leaning against the doorway of her room, like it's bracing one shoulder on the frame. And it's turned toward me. I can't see a face, but I can feel it looking right at me. At that point, my fight or flight just shuts down and does something stupid. I decide to get up, walk into the hallway, and close my door. Like closing a hollow wooden door is going to protect me from whatever that is. The second I shut my door, I hear it. The loudest, heaviest footsteps I have ever heard, pounding down the hallway, right past my room, and then thundering down the stairs. It sounded like something huge and angry running through the house. My mom comes to my room, opens my door, and her eyes are wide. "You heard that too, right?" I just nodded. I could still feel my heart in my throat. And then, while we're all awake, standing there in the hallway, we hear it again, from downstairs. The computer turns on, the familiar startup sounds, then the little chime from the Sims launcher, then the Sims 3 music. All three of us hear it. Normally, one of my parents would go downstairs and shut it off, but that night, my mom just looked at us and said, "We're leaving it. If it wants to play, it can play." So we all went into her room instead and tried to sleep with the Sims music drifting up the stairs, like the ghost was happily building a little digital house while we were curled up in the dark, terrified. Sometimes I try to tell myself I was just freaking myself out. I hadn't been watching scary movies or thinking about anything creepy before that. I was literally just editing a Vine. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw in my sister's doorway. And even now, all these years later, just talking about it gives me chills. Alright, hey. So, my name's Caleb, I'm 14, and I live in this tiny town in Pennsylvania. Like, really tiny. We've got one Family Dollar, one little grocery store, and that's basically it. I'm telling you that because it kinda matters later. So every weekend, my mom, Lisa, goes to her boyfriend Dave's place, and she usually leaves me home alone. Our house is super old, like late 1800s old, and it sounds like it. The floors creak, the pipes complain, the walls settle, and like every old house, we've got mice. So I'm used to weird sounds. I grew up with that stuff. But around the middle of 2023, I started noticing something different. Stuff that seemed to come from the basement. At first, it was small things. I'd be upstairs and hear shuffling, like something moving across the basement floor, or this quick little scurrying, and I'd just think, yeah, okay, that's just mice. No big deal. Then it started getting off. I'd go to bed after making sure the basement door was locked, like I know I locked it. And I'd wake up, go downstairs, and the door would be unlocked. At first I told my mom, and she just said, "You probably thought you locked it and forgot, honey." And I'm like, yeah, maybe? You kind of gaslight yourself, you know? So the next night, I'm extra careful. I lock it, jiggle the doorknob, even check it twice. Next morning, unlocked. Then it happens again, and again, and again. I'm talking like 4, 5 times in a couple weeks. At that point, I'm starting to get really creeped out, but I'm trying to be logical. I keep telling myself, "You're just forgetting, dude. Chill." Then more stuff starts happening. One afternoon, I'm walking into town to go to the Family Dollar, and as I'm leaving the house, I just feel weird. You know that feeling like you're being watched? So I turn around to look at the house, and I see the basement doors. Now, our basement has those old double doors that open outward from the outside, kind of like storm doors. And both of them, both, are wide open. I know I closed them, and they're heavy, like 30 or 40 pounds each. No way the wind just swung them open. So at this point, my heart is doing that fast, fluttery thing. I'm trying not to freak out in the middle of the yard. I tell myself I'll deal with it later and keep walking to the store, hoping that by the time I come back, I'll have some rational explanation in my head. I get my stuff, walk back, and the doors are still open. And honestly, as scared as I am, there's this tiny bit of relief, because at least I know I'm not imagining it. I'm not just forgetting this time. So I take a deep breath, push past the fear, and head down into the basement. Now, to explain the layout real quick, my basement's got 3 rooms. There's a big main room when you first walk in. Off that is a smaller room. And then there used to be a 3rd room, but part of it caved in like 6 or 7 years ago, so that area is basically unusable now. There's also this low, dark crawl space I've never gone into. Ever. It just gives off bad vibes. So I'm down there, in the 1st room, looking around. Nothing. Just the old furnace, some boxes, dust. I go into the 2nd room, still nothing. It's quiet, just me breathing, my footsteps on the concrete. Then I walk past where the 3rd room used to be, kind of skirting that broken area and the crawl space. I don't see anything at first. I'm about to head back upstairs, and as I pass the doorway, something in my peripheral vision makes me freeze. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a hand. Just a hand, pale, coming out of the edge of the crawl space. I don't stop to study it. I don't investigate. I don't do anything heroic. I just go, out loud, "Hell no." I slam the basement door shut, twist the lock, and sprint upstairs so fast I'm pretty sure I skipped entire steps. When I wake up, it's dark, and my bedroom door is open. I know I locked it. I remember hearing the little click, but it's just standing there, cracked open like someone peeked in and forgot to shut it. I tell myself, okay, maybe you didn't actually lock it. Maybe you just thought you did. I'm trying so hard to be reasonable because the alternative is Not fun. So, I get up, walk around the house. It's quiet. Nothing's obviously out of place. No drawers open, no windows broken, nothing moved. It's like any other morning. Eventually, it gets to be around 8 in the evening, and the usual house noises start up again. Creaks, pops, little sounds from the basement. I try to ignore it. I game, I watch videos, I pretend I'm somewhere else. Then one night, I'm in my room playing Warzone. Headset on, but not too loud because I've been paranoid lately. And that's when I hear it. Heavy panting, like a dog, right outside my bedroom door. I pause the game, pull one ear of the headset off, and listen. It's still there. This low, steady, heavy breathing. So I call out, "Roxy?" That's my dog. Nothing. No collar jingle, no scratching, no excited pause. Just breathing. I call her again, louder this time. Still nothing. And then it hits me like a bucket of ice water. Roxy went with my mom to Dave's. She's not here. That's when I say, "Oh shit," under my breath, and I put the controller down. The panting stops, just cuts off, like someone hit a mute button. I stand up, my heart pounding, and I'm trying to sound tougher than I feel. I grab the little knife I keep in my room. Yeah, I know, not smart, but it made me feel better. And I call out, "Who's out there?" Silence. So I say, "I'm serious. You've got 3 seconds to answer me or I'm coming out there." I'm shaking, trying to sound brave, trying to convince myself there's a normal explanation. And then, whatever it is out there makes this sound. It barks. Not a full, happy dog bark, more like a rough, short copy of a bark. But it sounds just like Roxy. Same pitch, same little hitch at the end. My brain latches onto that. I'm like, okay, maybe Mom forgot something and dropped Roxy back off. Maybe she didn't tell me. Maybe I just didn't hear the car. I let my guard down a bit, lower the knife, and walk toward the door. I open it. The second the door swings wide, something slams into me. Hard. I don't see anything. Just this blur and then pain, and then I'm on the floor. It's so fast that I don't even have time to register what I'm looking at, if I was even looking at anything at all. Everything just goes black. When I come to, I'm lying on my bedroom floor. My head is pounding. I grab my phone to check the time. 1:36 a.m. My bedroom door is wide open. I get up way too fast, stumble a little, and run downstairs. In our kitchen, there's this little side room where we keep our shoes and coats. That room has a door to the kitchen, and then there's another door that leads to the backyard. Both of those doors are standing open, just like the basement doors were. Like something moved through there and didn't bother to close anything behind it. And in that moment, standing there in the dark with both doors open and the night just sitting outside like a big black mouth, I realize something. I don't feel safe here anymore. Not in this house. Not in this town I've known my whole life. Not with the doors I know I locked opening themselves, and hands in crawl spaces, and something that can bark like my dog and hit me so hard I black out. And the worst part? I still have to sleep here. Okay, so let me tell you about the one story that's never really let go of me. When I was little, the older kids in our neighborhood loved to scare us with ghost stories. You know the type. Urban legends, half made up, half remembered from someone's cousin's friend. Most of them I've forgotten, but there was one that stuck. They called it Uzunigyo, the whirlpool doll. According to them, it wasn't a full doll at all. Just a child's head with long, stringy hair, drifting around at night and laughing in this weird, hollow voice. Ho ho ho. As a kid, I tried to act tough, but honestly, I was terrified. I wouldn't even go to the bathroom at night without turning on every light on the way. Years passed, and I grew out of most of that fear. By high school, I'd pretty much convinced myself it was just one of those stories older kids pass down for fun. That summer, our school organized a camp up in the mountains by a lake. The lodge we stayed in was surrounded by forest. Really quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear insects and the wind in the trees, and not much else. Behind the lodge, a little way up the slope, there was this old, abandoned inn. The teachers told us not to go near it, said it was dangerous and unstable, which of course just made it 10 times more interesting. One night, after lights out, a younger student, her name was Mai, came running into our room, pale and shaking. She said, "I saw a kid's face at the door of the old inn. It was just staring." We all groaned and teased her. "Seriously? You've been watching too many horror movies." Someone joked, "Maybe it's Uzunigyo coming to say hi." We were laughing about it, kind of loud actually, and one of the guys pulled the curtain open to prove there was nothing there. From the window, you could see the silhouette of the abandoned inn on the hill. And that's when we saw it. Not at the door like Mai said. This time it was at a second-floor window. A small, pale face, just pressed against the glass, looking down toward our lodge. At first, we all went quiet, like maybe it was a reflection or a trick of the light. But the longer we stared, the more it felt like it was staring back. Someone said, too quickly, "It's probably a mannequin or something." And that kind of broke the silence. We talked ourselves into believing that. We wanted to believe that. Later that night, a group of us decided to sneak out and check. Because of course we did. There were 5 of us. Me, my friend Haru, another guy named Kenji, and 2 others. We took our flashlights and crept up the path behind the lodge, trying not to step on branches and give ourselves away. The air around the inn was different, cooler, damp. Up close, the building looked even worse. Windows mostly boarded up, the wood warped with age, the sign hanging crooked. The front sliding door wouldn't budge, so we found a side door that was already cracked open, like someone had forced it a long time ago. We squeezed through one by one. Inside, it felt like the building was holding its breath. Our flashlight beams cut through dust hanging in the air. There were broken chairs, rotting tatami, old posters peeling off the walls. It smelled like mold and something else, stale, like a room that had been closed for years. We walked in a line, our lights bouncing around. I remember the sound of our feet on the floorboards, soft, cautious creaks. At some point, I realized it had gotten too quiet. No insects, no wind, just us. We reached the center of what used to be the lobby. That's when Kenji started laughing. At first, it was just a small chuckle. We thought he was messing with us. "Cut it out, man," Haru said. "You're gonna freak everyone out." But Kenji didn't stop. His laughter got louder, sharper. It didn't match his face at all. His eyes were wide and unfocused, like he wasn't actually seeing us. I stepped toward him. "Kenji, hey, you okay?" He didn't answer. He just kept laughing, breathless, like he couldn't stop. That's when we heard it from the stairwell. A small voice, echoing in that empty building. Ho, ho, ho. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Very slowly, we turned our flashlights toward the stairs. There, just beyond the corner of the staircase, something leaned out. It was a child's head. No shoulders, no body. Just the head, as if it were perched on an invisible shelf in the air. Long black hair hanging down, skin too pale, eyes too dark. It tilted slightly, like it was curious about us, Ho, ho, ho. The sound didn't match the shape of its mouth. It was like the voice was coming from somewhere deeper in the house, echoing through the walls. I remember my legs feeling like they weren't part of me. My whole body wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Then Haru grabbed my arm and yelled, "Run!" We dragged Kenji between us. He was still laughing, choking on the sound, heels scraping the floor. Someone kicked open a warped door or window, I can't even remember clearly, and we stumbled out into the cold night air. Only once we were outside did Kenji's laughter finally stop. He went limp, like someone had cut his strings. The teachers rushed him to the hospital in town. He stayed there for a while. When he came back, he seemed normal, just a bit quieter. The strange thing is, he didn't remember any of it. Ask him about the inn, and he'd frown and say, "I just remember feeling tired." The next day, the locals came up with the school staff. They nailed the doors shut properly, put up warning signs, even placed a small stone shrine near the path, with fresh flowers and a little wooden plaque. I don't know what was written on it, but the adults looked serious. Camp ended, and life went on. I went back home, back to my usual room, my usual routines. I tried to fold that night away like an old letter, something I could tuck into a drawer and forget. But a few nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night. No reason, just that feeling, like something was standing right outside your field of vision. My room was dim. The streetlight outside barely reached my window. I lay there, listening, and then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Soft, but clear, right at my window. I told myself it was a branch or maybe a cat. I really wanted it to be a branch or a cat. Still, I got up. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I walked over and, with one hand, pulled the curtain aside just a little. On the roof outside my window, a child sat in a small, old-fashioned kimono. Bare feet, hair hanging over their face. For a second I thought, it's just a kid. It's just a kid who got up here somehow. Then its neck began to stretch. Slowly, smoothly, like someone was pulling its head away on an invisible rod. The body stayed seated, but the neck grew longer and longer, until the head was level with my window, mere inches from the glass. The hair slid back just enough for me to see the face. It was smiling. Too wide, too still. The mouth barely moved as that hollow voice floated into my room. Ho, ho, ho. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just stood there, hand frozen on the curtain, staring back. I don't remember lying back down. I just remember that somehow, at some point, I ended up under my blanket, shaking, and I watched the sky through a crack in the curtain until it turned gray and then light. In the morning, the roof outside my window was completely empty. No footprints, no scuff marks, nothing out of place. I told myself it was a dream. That's what anyone would say, right? Just a nightmare after a scary experience at camp. But sometimes, even now, on really quiet nights, I'll be doing something, reading, on my phone, whatever, and suddenly I'll feel that same heaviness in the air. Ho, ho, ho. So, let me tell you about something that happened back when I was in university. It didn't happen to me directly. It happened to my friend, Daniel. But I was right there for the aftermath, and I can still picture it like it was yesterday. It was around 10 at night. I was in my tiny off-campus apartment, half watching some late TV and half dozing on the couch, when my front door suddenly burst open. Daniel stumbled in without even knocking. His face was absolutely drained of color, his hair still damp, t-shirt half on like he'd thrown it over himself in a panic. He He just sort of collapsed onto the floor right inside the doorway, breathing hard, shaking like he'd sprinted the whole way over. I remember sitting up and going, "Whoa, Dan, hey, what happened? Are you okay?" He didn't answer at first. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely untie his shoes. I could see his knees actually knocking together. It took him a good minute to catch his breath, and when he finally looked up at me, his eyes were glassy and unfocused, like he'd just walked out of a nightmare. I can't go back there," he muttered. "Back where?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "My place." Now, at the time, Daniel was living alone in this small but pretty nice studio apartment about 10 minutes from campus. His parents lived several hours away, and he wasn't dating anyone. I'd been there plenty of times. It was just him, his cluttered desk, a futon, and way too many instant noodle cups. So I asked him, "Did someone break in? Did something happen?" He shook his head, still staring at the floor. "No, that's the problem. There wasn't supposed to be anyone there." I could feel my skin prickling a bit, but I tried to stay calm for his sake. "Okay," I said gently. "Start from the beginning. What happened?" He took a deep breath, rubbed his face with his hands, and then, in this low, shaky voice, he told me. He'd gone home like usual after his evening lab, grabbed a quick dinner, and decided to soak in the bath for a bit to relax. His bathroom had one of those old apartment intercom panels on the wall, wired to the front door so you could buzz people in or talk to whoever rang. He said he was scrolling on his phone, half asleep in the warm water, when his elbow accidentally hit the intercom button. He heard the soft click as it turned on. He told me he sighed, annoyed, because he thought maybe he'd just buzzed someone by accident or triggered some weird noise in the hallway. He was about to get out and towel off when, from the speaker outside the bathroom, he clearly heard a woman's voice say, "Wait there, I'm coming in now." He said the voice was calm, not angry, not playful, just matter of fact, close, like she was standing just on the other side of the door. For a second, he thought maybe he'd misheard it. Maybe it was the TV from a neighbor's place, but then it sank in. He lived alone. He hadn't ordered food. No one was supposed to be coming over. And the intercom only connected to the building entrance and his front door. He told me that the realization hit him all at once. This cold, heavy feeling dropping right into his stomach. He suddenly became very aware of how quiet his apartment was. No footsteps in the hallway, no elevator sounds, just water dripping from the faucet and his own breathing. "And that voice," he said to me, staring at nothing. "It was right there, in my apartment, not from outside, inside." His whole body started shaking again, just remembering it. "I wanted to get out of there," he said, "but I was still in the tub. I felt exposed, like if I opened the door, someone would be standing right there, staring at me." He didn't look around. He didn't check any rooms. He just focused on the front door. I kept telling myself, "It's fine. There's no one. You're just freaking out," he said. But at the same time, it felt like someone was watching me. Like if I turned my head, I'd see them standing in the corner or behind the bathroom door. When he reached the entrance, he grabbed the handle and yanked. The door didn't move. He realized the deadbolt was still locked. That didn't bother him at first. He had a habit of locking it the moment he got home. But then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The security chain was still latched. "I locked it when I came home," he told me, his voice almost a I remember doing it. I always do. But if the chain was on the whole time? He looked up at me then, eyes wide. Then who was the woman talking through the intercom? And how was she going to come in? He said that at that moment, every instinct in his body was screaming at him to get out. So he fumbled the chain open with shaking hands, unlocked the deadbolt, and practically ripped the door off its hinges, getting it open. He didn't even bother putting on shoes properly. He just shoved his feet into them and bolted down the hallway, down the stairs, and all the way to my place without looking back. By the time he finished telling me this, he was trembling again, his fingers wrapped so tightly around the beer can I'd given him that it was bending in his hand. I tried to be rational. I really did. Maybe it was the neighbor's intercom, I suggested. Maybe the sound carried through the walls or pipes, or a prank. You know how thin those walls are. He shook his head. It was my intercom panel, he said firmly. I heard the click when I pressed it. The little red light came on. And the voice. It wasn't distant. It was right there, right in the apartment. I started to ask, did you at least see anyone? Like, when you opened the door? He cut me off, eyes dropping back to the floor. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just ran. That night, he refused to go back to his apartment, so he crashed at my place instead. We left every light on, kitchen, bathroom, hallway, even the tiny balcony light. He downed almost every bottle of alcohol I had in the fridge, not to party, just to stop his hands from shaking long enough to fall asleep. Even then, he kept jolting awake, asking me to check the door. Make sure the chain's on, he'd mutter. Please, just make sure. The next morning, he called his parents from my living room. I could hear pieces of the conversation, his mom's worried voice crackling through the phone, his father's more serious tone. Daniel didn't go into details with them while I was listening, but I heard him say, I don't feel safe there. And, no, I really can't explain it, but I don't want to stay another night. Within a couple of days, his parents drove up, went to the apartment with him in broad daylight, and helped him pack his things. He didn't stay there alone again, not even once. After that, he moved back in with his parents for a while. Said he'd commute or maybe transfer, he wasn't sure. We messaged a bit at first, but then the replies got slower and slower. Eventually, his account went quiet. We never had a real conversation about that night again. Every once in a while, I still try to look him up. Old group chats, social media, mutual friends. But it's like he just drifted out of everyone's orbit. Nobody seems to know exactly where he ended up. I think about that a lot. And here's the funny thing. Well, not funny, but you know what I mean. But ever since that night with Daniel back in university, I've been very, very careful. When I take a bath or shower, I make sure I don't lean against that wall. I keep my distance from that little button. I never rest my arm near it. I never touch it by accident. Because the thought that creeps up on me every time I see that intercom is this. If I pressed it without meaning to, and a woman's voice came through, calm and clear, saying, "Wait there. I'm coming in now." I honestly don't know if I'd be brave enough to look around either. You know, I grew up in this tiny barangay in the Philippines, way out in the province. Rice fields, tricycles, the usual, nothing fancy. On the outside, my life looks very normal. But ever since I was a kid, there's been this extra layer to my world. I've always been sensitive to things I can't see. Ghosts, encantos, even what some elders call mananictic or manignos. I don't actually see them, no white ladies appearing in the hallway or anything like that. It's more like I feel them. It's like the air shifts, or the mood of the room changes, and suddenly I just know I'm not alone. I'm the only one in my family who's like this. My parents and my sisters, Mara and Lisa, they don't really feel anything. They believe me, kind of, but for them it's just stories. For me, it's my everyday background noise. The feeling is really hard to explain. It's not like ordinary fear or regular stress. It's more like this silent pressure. Imagine you're doing something, and suddenly you just know somebody wants you to stop. Or you're sleeping, and it's as if someone is standing right beside your bed, staring at you, silently saying, "Wake up." It hits me in my body first. My chest gets tight, my stomach feels heavy, like there's a stone inside. My mind starts racing even if nothing is actually happening. It's not the same as being angry or worried about something I understand. This one doesn't have a clear reason. It just shows up, and I can tell it's connected to them. Because of that, I've had trouble sleeping since I was really young. I learned to live with it. I found little routines, praying, listening to soft music, keeping a small light on, things like that. Eventually, I settled into a simple, peaceful life, where the strange stuff became more like the background. Still there, but not as loud. Then came the spare room. In our house, there's this small room at the back. We used to store old things there, but after a while it was just left closed. No one had stayed in it for, I think, almost 7 years. The window is small, the walls are plain, but it's comfortable for one person if you clean it up. Recently, I got a job as an online tutor, so sometimes I have to stay up late because of the time difference with my students. When I was still sharing a room with my sisters, my typing and moving around would wake them up. So I thought, okay, I'll just fix up the spare room, work there at night, and sleep there too. Problem solved. At that time, I hadn't felt anything strange in a long while, so I thought maybe things had finally settled down. Maybe the spirits had moved on, or I'd grown out of that sensitivity. I was wrong. The very first night I slept in that room, I was exhausted. I'd been working on my laptop for hours, checking lessons, sending feedback. When I finally lay down, it should have been easy to fall asleep. But as soon as the lights were off and the house went quiet, I felt it. That presence. It wasn't just regular nervousness. It was that familiar weight in the air. I felt watched. Not from one corner, but from all around. Like the room itself was awake and paying attention to me. What's strange is, I didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me. It was more like offended, upset. If I could put it into words, it felt like, why are you here? This is not yours. That feeling kept pulling me out of sleep. I'd drift off for maybe 30 minutes, then suddenly open my eyes. No noise, no movement, just that strong sense that someone was standing too close. I'd look around and, of course, see nothing, but the feeling stayed. This went on for 2 nights. During the day, when I was working on the computer in that room, I could feel something faint behind me. Not close enough to touch me, but close enough that the hairs on my neck stood up. You know that feeling when someone reads over your shoulder? It was like that, but quieter, colder. I tried talking to them, softly, respectfully. I said things like, "Please, I'm just working. I don't mean any harm. This is our house too." Then, when I got scared, I'd snap and say, "Stop it! Leave me alone!" But deep down I knew, from all the stories I'd heard growing up, that simply telling them to go away doesn't really work with beings like that. After 2 nights of barely sleeping, I'd had enough. In the morning, I went back to my sister's room and told Mara and Liza what happened. I told them how it felt, how I kept waking up, and how the room felt occupied. We started talking about it, remembering things from when we were younger. When we were kids, there were two parts of the house that always felt strange, like they were claimed by something else. Over the years, we renovated one area, added a small extension, and that weird feeling there faded. It's almost like the spirit slowly got pushed back, and now the only space they have left is that little spare room. We kind of laughed nervously about it, but we all agreed on one thing. They're probably upset because I barged into what they consider their space. Like I moved into their last corner of the house without asking. It's not just me either. Guests who sleep in that room always feel something off. Some say they feel stressed for no reason. Some wake up with headaches, and a few even get mild fevers. But the strange part is, it only happens if they sleep there. If they stay in the living room or in our shared room instead, they're fine. So today, I gave up the idea of conquering that spare room. I moved my things back into the room I share with my sisters. It's a bit crowded again. Laptop on a small table, clothes piled in one corner. But at least I can sleep without feeling like I'm intruding on someone else's home. We're talking about how to handle it now. Maybe we'll ask a priest to bless the house again. Maybe we'll invite an elder who knows how to talk to spirits, to make peace, acknowledge that the room is part of their space, but also part of ours. I don't feel angry at them, honestly. If anything, I feel like we've been sharing this house for years, and I just forgot to be considerate. So yeah, for now, I respect that the spare room isn't just an empty room. Something lives there, or at least lingers there. And until we find a peaceful way to share the space, I'll let them have it. After all, we're the ones who can move and adjust. They only have that small room left. So, my name's Michael, and this is the story of the wildest night of my life. I always feel a little awkward starting this one, because it sounds like a movie pitch, but it really happened. And the strangest part is, I wasn't even looking for anything paranormal. I just wanted a quieter life in the country, with people I loved. Back in 2020, I moved from Indiana down to this tiny place in northern Alabama called Ridgefield. It wasn't even a real town, more like a collection of houses and trailers stitched together by gravel roads and fields. I went down there for my then girlfriend. Let's call her Mara. Mara and I met online. She'd been following my music and art since late 2018, and eventually we went from comments to DMs to video calls to planning trips. By the time COVID really hit, we were serious enough that long distance just wasn't cutting it anymore. There was one catch, though. She still lived with her ex, Caleb. Now, Caleb had been in her life for, 10 years. They weren't really a couple anymore, more like best friends who never untangled their lives. On top of that, Mara used to be polyamorous. If we wanted to be together, we had to agree to make things monogamous. I was nervous, I'm not gonna lie, but I took the risk. To my surprise, Caleb and I actually got along. He was this tall, lanky history nerd who collected old coins, busted muskets, and all kinds of antique knives and swords. He'd just pop into the living room like, "Hey, you want to see a bayonet from World War I?" The place we lived in was rough, but charming in a weird way. Old farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, with cornfields, cows in the distance, and a dirt driveway that turned into a mudslide when it rained. Floors were patched, some doors didn't shut right, but the rent was something like $350 a month, which tells you everything you need to know about the condition. Still, I was happy. New state, new people, fresh start. Enter Jade. By the summer of 2021, things had settled into a routine. Then Caleb met this girl at his job at the grocery store. Let's call her Jade. From what he told us, she kind of just walked up to him on a slow night and said something like, "I don't know why, but your energy feels familiar." Which is a wild thing to say to someone stocking dog food, but hey, it worked. They started hanging out, and pretty quickly, she was over at the house a lot. At first, I really liked her. She was sharp, funny, kind of nerdy, and she loved to laugh. Every now and then she'd smoke a little, but nothing crazy. She was polite, sweet, and honestly seemed more grounded than a lot of people I'd met. Then she opened up about her spiritual side. She told us that when she was a kid, her mom had forced her into this ritual, a blood oath kind of thing. She said her mom had this old occult book and drew a pentagram, made her cut her finger, and swear something she didn't understand. After that, she said weird things started happening to her. Feeling watched, seeing shadow figures, hearing voices, having episodes where something else would take over. She'd lose chunks of time. And sometimes, she said, she just slipped into this void and couldn't get out. She was very open about it. No theatrics, no trying to impress us. Just, "Hey, this is my reality. If you're going to be around me, you should know." Caleb didn't seem too bothered. Mara was used to spiritual stuff and energy work, so she took it seriously. Me? I was on the fence. I believed her, but I kind of hoped it was just some weird sleep paralysis type thing. Then one night, I ran out of room for doubt. The first night, we're just about to fall asleep when we hear this dull thud somewhere in the hallway. Not super loud, just enough to make you go, "Huh?" A few minutes later, there's a knock on our bedroom door. Caleb's voice, calm but tight. "Hey, can you guys come help with something?" Mara gets up right away. I stay in bed at first, just listening. I can hear them talking, but it's muffled, and after maybe 10 minutes, curiosity wins. I swing my legs out of bed, open the door, and lean into the hallway. Jade is on the floor. She's lying kind of sideways in the middle of the hall, half in shadow, mumbling, "No, no, 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 no," over and over, like someone trapped in a nightmare. My first thought, honestly, was that maybe she was having a bad reaction to something she smoked. Her eyes were open, but it was like nobody was home. Caleb and Mara were kneeling beside her, trying to snap her out of it, calling her name, touching her shoulder, telling her she was safe. She wasn't responding, just stuck in that weird, low chant. We decide to get her outside, thinking fresh air might help. So we carefully pick her up and carry her out into the front yard. The sky is clear, stars everywhere, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. We lay her on the grass. After a minute or two, she starts to come back. Her eyes focus a little, and she blinks like she's just woken up from a long, confusing nap. She turns her head towards me and, in this soft, tired voice, says, "I can feel how nervous you are. It's okay." She hadn't even really looked at me yet, but she nailed it. I gave this awkward half laugh like, "Yeah, no kidding." She explains that this isn't new to her. She calls it the void. She says when it happens, it's like she's trapped in this dark, empty place with no sense of time, and when she comes back, it's fuzzy at best. Meanwhile, Mara and Caleb are sharing that look people share when they've already decided, this is spiritual. Once Jade can sit up, we bring her back in and lay her on the couch in Caleb's room. He's holding her, trying to keep her grounded. That's when he notices these scratches on the back of her shoulder. I'm standing behind the couch, and he turns her a little so we can see. There are 3 long, red welts across her shoulder blade. Fresh, angry, like something clawed her. We didn't have any pets in that room, and she hadn't fallen against anything. Then he tells us something else. Right before she collapsed, She kept drifting toward the bathroom down the hall. He said her face went blank. She started walking toward it slowly, and as she reached the doorway, the hall light flickered and blew out. Just pop. Done. It never turned back on after that. That got my attention. We'd always hated that bathroom. The whole house was old, but that room had this extra layer of nope attached to it. Soft, warped floorboards, mildew smell, and a weird, cold stillness even in summer. We hardly ever used it. There was a second bathroom on the other side of the house, so we just kept this one shut and pretended it wasn't there. Jade tells us that whatever was messing with her was in that bathroom, that it was trying to lure her in. At this point, my logical brain is clocking out, and my, okay, what if this is real, brain is clocking in. The possession. We go to check the bathroom. As soon as I step in, I get goosebumps. The air feels thick, heavy, colder than the rest of the house. My arms break out in chills. We don't stay long. We get back to Caleb's room, and that's when things really escalate. Jade starts to go distant again. Her eyes glaze over, turn kind of glassy and red-rimmed. Her posture changes. Her breathing gets deeper, heavier, and then she starts to fight. Not like a confused person thrashing in their sleep. This was targeted, angry, strong. It's clear very quickly that we're not talking to Jade anymore. Her voice drops, gets rough and guttural. She growls, snaps, tries to jerk free. We actually try to talk to whatever's in there. I know that sounds ridiculous, but in the moment, it felt like the only thing we could do. We say stuff like, "You don't have to stay here. There's so much world out there. Go anywhere. Go see the oceans, the mountains. Just leave her alone." And this thing answers. It says it wants to make itself known, that someone has to die. At one point, it even threatens to kill one of our pets. We had 2 cats and a little mutt of a dog, all of them sitting in the doorway, wide-eyed, watching us. Every time the thing mentioned them, my stomach dropped. All the while, Caleb is wrestling to keep her pinned, sweating, exhausted, just repeating her name under his breath like a mantra. Mara looks at me and goes, "Go grab sage, the fresh stuff from the garden, now." I bolt outside, grab a handful of sage from the little herb patch by the porch, run back in, and try to light it. Fresh sage doesn't really want to burn, but I get it smoldering eventually, blowing on it until it starts to put off smoke. The reaction is instant. Every time I waft the smoke toward Jade's face, this thing snarls. Low, angry, like it's in pain. Her body tenses and jerks. It's not subtle. So I just keep going. I circle the room, then aim the smoke right at her. Sometimes she manages to get an arm loose and tries to swat the sage out of my hand, but I've got a death grip on that little bundle. At one point, it's taunting us, talking trash, saying we're weak and we can't do anything. I don't even know what came over me, but I just blurt out, "Man, who pissed in your cereal?" For a second, everything goes quiet. And then it lets out this deep, dark chuckle. I remember thinking, great, I've just made a demon laugh. That's not on my life bingo card. We play spiritual music, stuff that feels uplifting and protective. We pray in our own messy, not religious way, just calling on whatever light and protection we can think of. We keep the sage going, keep talking to Jade, reminding her she's loved, that she's stronger than this thing. This goes on for hours. The whole night starts to blur into this loop of smoke, growling, whispered encouragement, and the sound of Caleb's breathing as he holds her in place. Eventually, the intensity starts to dip. The growls get weaker. Her body isn't fighting as hard. By the time the first light of morning starts slipping through the blinds, this thing feels tired. We think we're done. We're not. The salt test. Around sunrise, Jade seems to come back. She blinks slowly, looks around like she just woke up in someone else's house. Her voice softens. She sounds like herself again, shaky, confused, but there. We're all exhausted. Mara decides to make her some herbal tea to help calm her nerves. As she's in the kitchen, she remembers something. Salt is supposed to be cleansing, protective. So, without saying anything, she stirs a good pinch or two of pink Himalayan salt into Jade's mug. We bring it back to her. She sits up a little, hands trembling, and takes a small sip. The reaction is immediate. She chokes, coughs, and the mug slips from her hand and shatters on the floor. Her eyes snap wide open, and that heavy, dark presence slams back into the room. It had been pretending. The demon, or whatever you want to call it, was just wearing her like a mask, waiting. As soon as the salt hits, it can't hold the act anymore. It snaps, and suddenly we're right back where we were. Voice low, body tense, vicious hostility pouring out of her. So round 2 begins. More sage, more prayers, more wrestling. The only difference this time is that it's weaker. Not harmless, but not as overwhelming as it was earlier. The grasshopper. Around 7 a.m., we can all tell the thing is draining. The growls are rougher, slower. The energy in the room feels like a storm that's finally passing. We manage to get Jade back outside, into the yard, to the same patch of grass under the morning sun. The sky is a soft blue, birds are waking up, and the air feels cleaner. We lay her down gently. She's pale, barely able to move. After a minute, she manages to sit up with our help, legs stretched out in front of her. Her eyes are half closed, like she's between worlds. We're just sitting there in silence when this tiny green grasshopper hops onto her left leg. We all notice it at the same time, but nobody says anything. It climbs up her knee, then onto her index finger. She lifts her hand slowly, bringing it closer to her face, and just stares at it for maybe 30 seconds. It felt like she was focusing everything she had left into that moment, into that little creature. Then, without a word, she lifts her arm and gently flicks her finger. The grasshopper jumps off into the tall grass and disappears. Right after that, she makes this small motion, like she's tying an invisible knot around a nearby dandelion stem. And then she just lies back, inch by inch, until she's flat on the ground and unconscious again. The energy around us shifts. It's subtle, but we all feel it. Lighter, quieter. We look at each other, too tired to analyze it, but we all have the same thought. Something just left. Aftermath and the second night. We carry her back inside. Caleb lays her on the bed and stays with her. I get maybe 2 hours of sleep before I have to drag myself to work. I remember driving that morning like I was in a dream, half convinced none of it really happened. The next day, our friend Marcus comes over. He usually hung out with us almost every day. We tell him the whole story. He believes us, but you can tell he also kind of thinks we're exaggerating. Fast forward to around 11 p.m. that night. Marcus and Caleb are outside in the front yard with Jade, just talking, smoking, hanging out under the stars. The yard opens up into this big cornfield with a tree line and a small shed off to the right. It looks peaceful from the porch, but at night, those woods are pitch black. Mara and I are in the kitchen cooking when Marcus bursts through the door, eyes wide, a little out of breath. Guys? I think we're gonna need that sage again. He tells us Jade went quiet, Her face went blank, and she started walking toward the dark edge of the property, toward the woods and the old shed. Marcus followed her, trying to get her attention. When he asked if she was okay, she turned around slowly, eyes empty, and in this low, drawn-out voice said, "No." That was enough for him. He sprinted back to the house. This time, we're not caught off guard. While I was at work that day, I'd picked up powdered sage, just in case. Caleb and Marcus grab Jade and guide her back inside, even as she's resisting. We get her onto the same couch. Caleb wraps his arms around her again, and we start the whole process over. Sage, smoke, music, firm words. Mara and Caleb are done being polite about it. They're tired of this thing coming into the house, and they say so. They tell it, "You're not strong. You're pathetic for needing a host. You can't touch us. You're not welcome here." And honestly, it is weaker. The whole possession lasts maybe 2 hours this time. Still intense, still scary, but nothing like the marathon of the night before. You can almost feel it slipping, like a bad signal cutting in and out. Marcus gets front row seats to all of it. By the end, he's pale and quiet, and very much no longer skeptical. Later, Jade tells us she felt the demon in the shed. She thinks when that grasshopper hopped away, it headed straight there, like the shed was some kind of anchor point. At the time, he wrote it off as being tired. After that second night, it didn't feel so random anymore. After that second night, things went quiet. No more possessions. No more strange sounds or shadows. No more lights blowing out. Life, slowly, went back to normal. Or as normal as it can after you've held a demon-possessed girl while your roommate waves burning sage in its face. We told a few friends and family members. Most of them believed us enough, like, "Okay, I don't think you're lying, but I don't really know what to do with this information." About a week later, Jade broke things off with Caleb. She was heartbroken, and then she was gone. They lost contact. To this day, we don't know how she's doing, or if that thing ever tried to come back. Eventually, Mara and I broke up too. It wasn't some huge, dramatic blow-up. We just grew apart. I moved out of Alabama, that closer to my own family. We're still on decent terms, and we check in on each other now and then. I look back on those 2 years in that creaky old house in Ridgefield, and it feels like a whole other lifetime. The good memories, the long talks on the porch, the stupid jokes, the music, the love. All of it sits right next to those 2 nights of pure, surreal fear. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm weirdly grateful I went through it. It cracked my world open a bit, made me realize how little we really understand about whatever else is out there. I don't pretend to have answers. I just know what I saw, what I felt, and what we all experienced together. If there's one silly but serious piece of advice I'll leave you with, it's this. Keep some sage and some salt in your house. You might never need it, but if you do, you'll be really glad it's there.